Hello and welcome everybody to the sixth episode of the Poker Fuse podcast. It is February 28th, 2019. I am your host, Mike Gentili, along with my co-host, Nick Jones. Nick, how is it going today?
I am very, very good. You get me really pumped up with your intros every week. It's just, you're firing on all cylinders. You get me excited. It's going to be a great podcast.
That's interesting because some of the feedback that we received is maybe that we should have a more standardized custom intro. Thoughts on that?
I don't even know what that would be like. We've got the music. We've got you being extremely effervescent. What else could you want?
Effervescent. I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah, I hope I used it correctly. That could be totally wrong. Let's just blow past it. I tell you what, this week I feel very much that we were ahead of the curve. When we started looking at topics that we might talk about, it's like WSOP bracelets, boom, done it already. GG Network, cash drop, boom, did it last week. I think we synced up nicely to the news cycle this week.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what we're going to be talking about. Probably things that are yet to come. And
yeah, always, that's it.
Yeah.
Ahead of the curve all the time. Let's dive straight in.
I guess that's the value in it, right?
There you go.
All right, so one of the first things we are going to talk about this week is the potential for a new game on PokerStars called Split Omaha. They have not confirmed it as of yet, but our super sleuth Anaj has found some evidence that that could be their next new poker variant.
So when we first saw this, I thought this is the time that PokerStars is actually messing with us and putting something in there to lead us astray. Just because when I first heard this idea, I thought this sounds ridiculous. But it turns out, and if you read our article, you'll read all about it, that this is actually a genuine game that is played live, double board Omaha, I guess it's called. Whereas, as the name would suggest, and if you know Split Hold'em, which PokerStars launched, it was actually their first of their novelty cash games which they launched. So way back in March 2018, they launched Split Hold'em, which is basically two boards, two flops, turns and rivers are dealt out, and then at the end of the hand the pot is split between the winner of one board and the winner of the other board. And of course, as with split pot games, you can scoop if your hand wins both boards.
Yeah, so the thing that jumps out at me about Split Omaha, and I need to preface this by saying I am not an Omaha player, but it seems to me that with Omaha in general, you tend to play more hands than Hold'em. And now Split Omaha with two boards, you're going to tend to play more hands than that. It seems to be a theme, maybe even with the 6+, which you tend to play more hands. So it feels like a trend of PokerStars releasing games that give players the opportunity to be in the action more and fold less.
Yeah, it's and I think in that regard, the criticisms leveled at something out of Split Hold'em, I guess, are kind of a double with Split Omaha, and you're obviously going to get a lot of split pots. You're going to get a lot of equal equities pre-flop, a lot of reasons to play a hand. I'll be honest, from a complexity level, I've tried to think about it and have struggled to really understand how you'd even go about playing this game. But that, yeah, as like you, I don't play PLO, so. No surprises there. But this is, a bit of a... It seems the most silly novelty of... of course, this is the assumptions that it plays just like Split Hold'em and is released. We don't know that for an absolute fact. PokerStars does not tell us ahead of time. But this is the sixth game we've predicted, and we've been right the other five. So... It's looking fairly good. But yeah, this seems the silliest, I guess, of the ones they've had.
It does seem to be very novelty-ish, for sure. Going back to something that you said earlier on this topic about the potential of PokerStars maybe trying to pull one over on us, I wanted to let the listeners know that suspicion is not just out of the blue. PokerStars has been quite... They've been quite... What's the word I'm looking for?
I'm watching you choose your words carefully over webcam. I'm just going to leave you to work it out.
Thanks, man. Leave me to struggle here. So they've been quite.
They've made mention before that they noticed that we get this out ahead of time, and they're not best pleased that we do.
Yeah, that's a very politically correct way of putting it. So I would not be surprised either if they were to just try and lead us off the scent, perhaps.
Yeah, but with that said, I think that would probably harm them more than it would harm us. I mean, so I suspected it when they launched Fusion, because literally I'm like, Poker Fuse, Fusion, like, is this messing us? But that again was a real game that they ran. I would be surprised if Split Omaha isn't real and isn't released kind of next month. So the dates that we are looking at. 6+ Hold'em, which again we might have talked about on this podcast. We definitely kind of suspected this game might be permanent. We've definitely seen more of an uptake in the game, more traffic, and it's not definite either way. But they did send out a mailer to customers saying that it was a temporary game. That might have been an indication that this game is going to be withdrawn.
One thing that leads me to suspect that it may not be is they are positioning themselves to launch the game in Italy. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. In fact, it might have already launched. Or so we saw, I believe, yesterday that they have updated their web pages to talk about 6+ Hold'em on their Italian website. So it is the first time that one of these variants has been, they've gone through that regulatory process to launch it in another market and in a segregated market.
Right, and that's usually quite an arduous task to get a new game approved by a regulator. So that kind of leads me to believe that it could be leaning more towards a permanent game.
Yeah, in fact, when we break it down, the only games that have really made it into Italy or France, Spain, Portugal, or India or New Jersey is obviously Zoom, Fast Fold, and the Lottery Sit and Go, Spin and Go. I know there was a lot of talk when Power Up launched that they were going to bring this to other regulated markets, and that was actually really interesting because under some regulations, certain power cards of Power Up they couldn't launch. I think in Spain, one power card wasn't permitted under the regulations, which I thought was fascinating. Saying that now, I don't think that has happened with Power Up. So if they do it with 6+, it really does go and show kind of a level of interest in the game. With that said, what we haven't seen with 6+ Hold'em is it hasn't been transformational in the way that Spin and Goes or Zoom were. So in the sense that maybe they were looking for explosive interest, or it's going to be a temporary game. It might fall into the temporary game bucket. But I would also think that maybe that's if that's the case, it's setting too high of a bar with just ultimately a rules change, which is what we're looking at with like 6+, Fusion, Split Hold'em. They're slight rule changes. They're not like Lottery Sit. Yeah, Power Up, Lottery Sit and Goes, where it's I don't know, it's introducing that whole new element with that jackpot. Zoom Poker, it's changing something fundamental about the way you play it rather than the rules of the game that you're playing. I don't think 6+ Hold'em could have gone much better. It's not like all of a sudden everyone's going to start playing this game.
That could change once if they decide to implement that format into a tournament format. So if they start releasing 6+ Sit and Goes or start having 6+ MTTs, that could be the thing that really puts that game over the edge and starts the interest in it to explode.
Yeah, and so I suppose just to give a bit more context, the reason why we're talking like it might be removed is up until now, they've always run one game. They've ran it for approximately 6 weeks. I think just looking down our table here, if you're interested in more on this, do check out PokerFuse. In the latest article, we've got a great table which shows every game that they've had, how long it's run for, and it's been very consistent, 55 to 64 days that each of the last 5 variants has run for. 6+ Hold'em launched January 16th, so it's been running for 5 weeks, going on 6 weeks. I think if it were to have the 60-day duration, it's going to be until mid-March, so a couple of weeks away, and that would tie in nicely with what we've seen with Split Omaha. Normally the time we spot this game, we spotted this a few weeks ago, within about a month it gets launched. So and they haven't had 2 running in tandem yet. So I mean, potentially I get maybe 6+ Hold'em is kind of promoted to a permanent thing, and it takes over a different section, and that part of the lobby is dedicated to a new variant. But yeah, we've never seen it. It's already quite crammed in the lobby with all their tabs to have 2 of them sat next to each other. So yeah, we'll certainly see where this goes and how this plays out. Also hot off the press is an article which we are just putting the final touches on, an article penned by Michael Gentile himself about West Virginia and the situation with the bill there.
Yeah, so what we have seen in West Virginia is the House of Representatives has passed an online gaming bill. That bill has moved over to some Senate subcommittees and is fully expected to pass the Senate and be signed into law by the governor. My take is that online poker, even if it is legalized, it's not sustainable in a state the size of West Virginia.
Yeah, so for context, West Virginia is tiny, isn't it? It's a population of about 2 million, is that right?
Yep, just under 2 million.
How does that compare with Delaware, which is also tiny? It's a bit bigger than Delaware.
Yeah, it's twice the size of Delaware. Delaware's under 1 million. But if we look back at the history of shared liquidity in the U.S., we can see the first two states to join forces were Nevada at 3 million people and Delaware at 1 million people. So they had a potential player pool of 4 million people, and they still struggled. It wasn't until they added New Jersey, and its 9 million population, bringing the total to 13, that we really saw a change in the amount of revenue generated. With West Virginia at 2 million, they're going to struggle with even a single online poker operator. I can't see them being profitable or having the potential to join in with the other states given the current political climate.
Yeah, and Nevada's a great example there, of course, because that was the first to launch regulated online poker, and it was just online poker, and it launched with quite fanfare. We had Ultimate Poker launch at the time, where they had a lot of marketing behind them. WSOP, and was it just those two launch at the start? Real Poker as well launched and never really took off.
Yeah, they were really small. They were never able to get their feet off the ground, really. So it was just those two. But then we saw, in the end, Ultimate Gaming ended up closing up shop. And I suspect that if it weren't for the actual World Series of Poker being in Las Vegas for 6 weeks during the summer, that population of 3 million people would still struggle just to house a single online poker operator.
Yeah, and of course, Nevada also has that advantage that it is, a vacation destination, and people who visit there can play online poker when they're in Nevada. It's fairly easy you can actually go physically to cages to deposit real money online poker. I'm going to guess here, I'm not particularly familiar with the states of your country, but not as many people go to West Virginia on a gambling vacation.
Yeah, I haven't looked it up either, but I would definitely say I'd put my money on the fact that Nevada has a lot higher tourism than West Virginia does. So, 1 million less people than Nevada, none of the tourism. I'd be surprised if anybody just goes into that state, even with the future as an outlook, because of the current situation with the Department of Justice.
Yeah, and so if anyone's just tuning in and don't know what kind of Mike's referencing there, I would say go back and listen. Last week, I think we covered the topic in terms of the WSOP. I think every week we've touched on it because, all news that's coming out of the United States is tainted by this reinterpretation of the Wire Act, which has really put in jeopardy the future of liquidity sharing across borders in the United States.
Yeah, and touching on a topic that we did cover last week as well is the World Series of Poker announcing their online bracelet events for this summer's 50th anniversary series. And the thing that jumps out to me there is the Department of Justice gave operators a 90-day period to get into compliance with their new opinion. That 90-day period is going to end at some point in late April, prior to the series starting. And the actual ramifications of that are really unknown. So the obvious one is that players in New Jersey would not be able to play the online event as they were able to last year. But I guess a more extreme thing that could happen is, depending on the routing of the data within WSOP's Nevada operation, if it does extend across state lines and back, it's possible that the Nevada regulators could step in and shut that down completely.
Yeah, it's sad that after for half a decade or more of very slow, agonizing, but ultimate progress towards, safe, regulated online poker in the United States. Inch by inch, finally we have the development of cross-border liquidity sharing. This whole thing is, and as you say, the WSOP and online bracelets, and just building a bit of momentum, building a bit of interest, and again in a safe, regulated manner. This is all thrown in jeopardy due to kind of one letter and one interpretation, which seems very politically charged, is perhaps the most euphemistic way I can put it.
And there are opportunities for things to turn around. As I said, that 90-day period will be coming to an end, but we also have lawsuits that have been filed. We have the attorneys general for both Pennsylvania and New Jersey seeking to get the DOJ to reverse their opinion. So there's a lot of moving parts to this story. A lot of things could happen between now and then. It'll be something definitely interesting to watch. Another big story that we've seen this week is that Unibet will be moving off of the iPoker network in France. Nick, what's the latest on that topic?
Yeah, so this actually press release that was just released today that we've been working on a little while, but I think it's official now, and it's going to happen. They said in Q1, which I guess is some point next month, which is Relax Gaming, which is kind of the software developer and the platform provider for Unibet's kind of doing air quotes here, independent online poker software. The piece of software which they moved on to some 5 years ago. And they are moving off where they are in France and on the iPoker network, and launching kind of an independent new network in France, which is fascinating for various reasons. For one, it's the first kind of new investment in the French online poker market in this way for a very, very long time. Yeah,
that's pretty big. But so just to clarify, the iPoker network Unibet in France right now is not utilizing the software that they use in the international market. Is that correct?
Yeah, right. So, so in the international market, in the .com market, Unibet uses this Relax platform, which, if you've played on it, is quite iconic. I would say it's particularly when it came out 5 years ago. It was very opinionated in its online poker experience. It's the software with a blind lobby, anonymous usernames, kind of a cartoonish look and feel, achievements built in. And so that has powered Unibet's online poker presence kind of globally for the last 5 years, and it includes the UK and Sweden and Denmark and that kind of thing. However, in France, so Unibet is also a big brand in France. They have historically just been on iPoker software in the French market. They've shared liquidity with BetClick, which is just another company. BetClick, Everest have had a skin, and the pair of them have shared liquidity in France. Just because it's such a hard market to operate in, and the two companies wanted an online poker offer, so they'd have something to offer customers there, but they couldn't really go it alone and run their own thing. Now that got a slight boost a couple of months ago because iPoker could combine their French network with their Spanish network, and in Spain they have 3 or 4 skins: Bet365, I think Betfair, and Casino Barcelona itself, which is the casino where everyone holds their big Barcelona events. That was a fairly new licensee. They pulled their liquidity, and also a very small network in Spain. So iPoker could join those two liquidity pools together and compete in this new kind of European market where we're seeing a lot of investment with PokerStars and Winamax and Party Poker.
So the thing that strikes me about Relax Gaming is anyone that has seen this software in action, it definitely has a new age online poker look and feel. It seems to be very well crafted. It's gotten a lot of positive feedback from players, but yet we haven't seen Relax take their platform anywhere else beside the Unibet product. And it's quite possible now that if they're looking to expand in regulated markets, that we could start seeing that platform perhaps in other regulated markets as well.
I think Relax Gaming and Unibet, the two have been used kind of interchangeably in the past, and certainly all the marketing has come from the Unibet end, and it's been their independent poker platform. And it's made a bit more complicated in the sense that Kindred Group, who own Unibet, do own a share of Relax Gaming, and there's also been a fair amount of movement of staff from one to the other. So there's been a lot of crossover, and it's been fairly easy to consider them consider them as kind of one individual entity, and Relax being kind of the software development arm of Kindred. But the reality is that I think Relax Gaming, in other products, they do bingo. They've got a big bingo product, and they've just got into slots as well. They have other customers, B2B customers on this, and so with their poker product up until now it has just been Unibet. And as I understand, I'm not sure on the exact specifics, but you get the impression that in the .com world it was an exclusive arrangement to use this platform in this .com market. But we definitely get the sense with the PR this week that in this French market and into the shared European markets, the Relax is proactively looking for other customers to pool liquidity with Unibet and build this competing French market. So it could be an operator in Spain, it could be potentially an existing iPoker customer in Spain or France who might be tempted to move over to, as you say, a fairly interesting product that, although is 5 years old now, which is a pretty long time in software development, certainly still is still kind of leads the way in some areas. We've absolutely seen other operators copy many facets of the Unibet poker client, or perhaps I should say the Relax Gaming poker client. In particular, Run It Once Poker is I think heavily inspired in many regards to some of the design decisions that Unibet Poker have made. But we have not seen a product like that in the French, Spanish market at all. So it's definitely going to be a unique addition for players there.
Right. And as we see this new wave of poker software hitting the market, and I'm speaking specifically of Relax and Run It Once, it'll be interesting to see which one of the major online poker operators, the traditional ones, gets the most competition from these newcomers, and how that changes the whole landscape of the online poker market in general, for internationally as well as in regulated markets.
Yeah, it's exciting to see smaller companies. Obviously, they have the flexibility and they have the nimbleness to try out different feature sets, take bold things like blind lobbies, like anonymous table names, like a blanket ban on third-party tools. I mean, those three things describe both Unibet and Run It Once, and we're seeing some of those properties filter through to some of the bigger operators. But it's good that once again, like we just generally have an industry where we have multiple competing companies trying different things and going in different directions, and also they now have the flexibility to take them into new markets as well. It's a very exciting development, and it's great to see that kind of innovation.
Yeah, and I think with this one specifically, it's a kind of a milestone, because what we're seeing for the first time is we're seeing one of these smaller new wave operators enter a regulated market where the barriers of entry are limited amount of competition and usually higher than normal regulatory fees. So to see someone take that leap or overcome those challenges bodes well for the future.
And just to put a final point on it, I think it's just, and going back to the previous conversation about US shared liquidity, this would absolutely not be happening if it wasn't for the fact that France signed a deal with Spain and Portugal to allow liquidity sharing. I mean, 100% that is Relax Gaming's plan. That's what's attracted to the market. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the French part alone is not profitable for anyone. Famously, it's been very hard to make a profit in the French market because the tax rates are so high. But that opportunity, the reason why they're starting in France, in my mind, is because obviously Unibet already has a presence there, so they already have some liquidity. They can look at the numbers, the network traffic, and know that they're taking that onto this new platform to seed it. But I wouldn't be surprised if soon we hear that's expanding either Unibet into the Spanish market or another customer entirely to start building this network. And that wouldn't be happening if we didn't see France, Spain, and Italy and Portugal, and hopefully Italy follows through on its agreement and doing it to really reinvigorate the market. There's no clearer example of that than a move like this. Regular listeners to the podcast might remember back in episode 2, over a month ago, it feels so long ago, that we had the exclusive news of PokerStars changing their policy on third-party tools. And PokerStars has finally confirmed these changes and that they will be going live next week, restricting automated seating scripts and what they can do.
And how do we expect that is going to change the experience for players that are on the PokerStars network?
Well, that's a really good question. It'll be interesting to see if large numbers of players change their behaviour. I mean, that's the big thing. It's very hard for us from the outside to know how many people today benefit from automated seating scripts and whether they will stop playing on PokerStars entirely, whether they will have to reduce their volume because it's harder to find games, whether they will change the types of games they play. So obviously what PokerStars wants, and to add a little bit of backstory here, amongst a few changes, restrictions on what third-party tools can do, the major one that really caught our eye is that you cannot now use any third-party tool to seat you in games if that tool uses any heuristics regarding players sat at the table, their statistics, any color coding. It can't use that at all. It can blindly sit you at tables, but it can't base it on who sat at those tables.
Right, so you can't have a tool that uses any information about your opponents or potential opponents in selecting the table to seat you at.
Right. And so the behaviour PokerStars wants to encourage, and they were fairly explicit about that in their official blog post about this yesterday, was that they want people obviously to continue playing the games they were playing before, but you're not hunting out the weaker opponents, you just take your seats and play. The reality is that the types of players who do hunt out good seats and play aren't all of a sudden just going to kind of accept playing in worse games. So the question is, does that play go elsewhere? Does it go to a competitor's site, which potentially PokerStars won't mind? Or will some of these players play less tables or spend more time manually choosing their seats? And I think, we don't really know the answer to that, and PokerStars probably doesn't know the answer to what the impact will be.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if we see any sudden change in the ecology on PokerStars as a result of the implementation of this policy. I think it's more likely that this is something that is going to shift over time. You may see more recreational players retaining their bankrolls more as a result of playing with less professionals or less high-volume players. You may see a fall-off in the amount of games that are played by the high-volume players, as you suggested, with them possibly seeking out a different operator. So I don't expect any overnight changes, but it's something to keep an eye on as time progresses.
Yeah, Well, another thing that really just stands out to me with the news and the details that came out yesterday is how hard it is for an operator today to have a policy where they permit some third-party tools and not others. Drawing that line is very, very tricky. PokerStars updated a document that they published on their website regarding what tools are permitted and what not, and tries to draw that line. That document is, I think, 41 or 42 pages long. It categorizes third-party tools into 7 different groups and then breaks down. So one of the rules that came out yesterday was you can use, and I might not get the details right, but you can use starting hand charts to help you play, but at most you can have 9 charts on a 13 by 13 grid.
Wow. How are they even going to be aware if that policy is being violated?
And this is, I think go back maybe a year or 18 months the last time they did these changes, and they had similar things about HUDs can't use more than 3 statistics to categorize a player, or 2 streets or something like that, like to the point that I didn't understand it or can't remember at the time, but this is the thing. This was a question that we brought up a month ago when we discussed this, was why PokerStars doing this now? So because they have said for the longest time that they wanted to stop automated seeding scripts, but they didn't want that rule until they felt confident that they could enforce it. So why do they now feel that they can confidently enforce it? Now, what they said in the blog post yesterday was that they have spent extensive development time and have used artificial intelligence to give them the confidence that they now feel that they can detect this kind of behavior.
I didn't yet read that blog post, so I'm going to ask you some questions on it. I know that part of the movement to stop these automated seeding scripts for PokerStars anyway was the implementation of SeatMe, which is a blind lobby system. So did they say anything about the future of that blind lobby system in their blog post yesterday?
No. And yeah, this is something else that we brought up a month ago, was that the implication here is that they clearly don't plan to roll it out anytime soon if they've gone to the trouble of, detailing these really nuanced, specific rules with the plans then to enforce it. Because obviously, the easiest thing with a lot of these third-party tools is, and we saw that with all the details, we've run it once, and Unibet is, as much as we're going to prohibit them, how better to just kind of nullify their value, and obviously blind lobby just nullifies the value, and that's the easy technological solution to it, and they specifically have not taken that path. So all we can surmise there is that there are either implementation issues or adverse behavioural effects with a blind lobby only system when it's applied to a player pool the size of PokerStars.
Yeah, I'm quite surprised to see the industry headed in this direction, to be honest. It was a few years back where I thought we were going to start seeing more operators eliminating the use of third-party tools on their site altogether and implementing some of those things built into the software, such as HUDs. We've seen, that's happened on some of the online poker platforms, but for the large part, a lot of the tools, the third-party tools that are available out there for the online poker industry or the experience, have not been incorporated into the software packages. I guess that's a route that I thought the industry was gonna head in a few years back, but it just doesn't seem like that's happening anytime soon.
Yeah, I would agree. The big changes, the blanket bans are still relegated to the smaller niche sites, like the ones that we've been talking about earlier on this podcast. The big three, PokerStars, Party, 888, still try and walk this tricky line to the point that actually right now I wanted to talk a bit about what PokerStars, Party Poker's policy is, and I couldn't tell you because I can't keep up on what's allowed. I can tell you that, for example, on 888, they support HUDs on all their tables except blast tables, for example. Why?
And blast is the fast fold.
Their fast fold game. I mean, how a player is even meant to know that? And again, you have to rely that the HUD developer is conforming to these rules. I don't even think PokerStars does an excellent job in publishing 42-page PDFs for everyone to read, journalists, right, players, and developers. They reached out to the developers over a month ago, which is why kind of we knew about it, why we heard about this. And they publish a really good page on their website saying, here's some examples of tools that are allowed, here's some examples of tools that are allowed but not when you play, here's some examples of tools that are never allowed. They go above and beyond other people, but it just really goes to underscore that, as you say, the big operators are still choosing to take a middle ground approach rather than the blanket ban, and they are not implementing the easy fixes that nullify the value of a lot of these tools. And we can only surmise that on the large scale, the large player pools, things like blind lobbies have negative behavioural impacts that have prevented these operators. So, and PokerStars have got a lot of data on this now because it's been live in the European share liquidity market now for coming on a year. It's been live in India since India launched, so they know how it works and how it impacts the players. So
when you say these negative behavioral impact, are you saying that they could have seen a reduction in liquidity or the amount of activity that they see on certain games because of the blind lobby?
I'm guessing here, yeah, but absolutely, there must be some. They must be looking at some numbers and going, that's not as good.
Yeah, because as the complexity of keeping up this allowance of third-party tools, as that grows, it's it has to be for a reason. If the easy solution is just to ban it, there must be a reason they're not doing that.
Yeah, and we look at, why are not all sites anonymous? PokerStars' reason is that they want it to be like a real poker game, and so you have a name and you can remember that name. Of course, it's not people's real name, so you're still using an online handle, but they don't want you to change it that frequently. And again, that's something that we started to see 6 years ago, and we probably wrote and talked about how this was a trend that was going to proliferate. And it started on Bodog, and then went to Unibet, and then we're seeing it run at once, and it's still it hasn't gone beyond. So it might be, as you say, a numbers thing, or it might just be the implementation deal. So something like the blind lobby, there are nuances there in terms of to prevent people just hopping tables. So you need to draw lines on that kind of thing, and have sit out times. You need to maintain the global waitlist. So potentially it's just like it's an implementation detail, but I'm now of the opinion that we are not going to see some of these on the bigger sites for whatever reason.
Okay, well, that covers a lot of the major topics that we saw this week. There's still a few out there that we did not have time to get to.
Yeah, this is the first week, I think, where we've had show notes and we just haven't got to a topic or two. So maybe it's just going to be a totally dead week next week, and we talk about it, because we were going to talk about Zynga and them having bots, and that's really, really interesting. We just haven't got the time. So if you would like to hear about that and you're a Pro subscriber, you can read about that on Poker Industry Pro. And if not, maybe we'll get something up on PokerFuse about it, or we'll talk about it next week, because it is a really interesting little topic that isn't being talked about anywhere else but in our own minds and on our website. So
yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to having that discussion. Well, until next week, I am your host, Mike Gentili, with Nick Jones here for the PokerFuse podcast. Take care, everyone.